All right, I am using my integrated webcam on my laptop. For those of you who do join me, please let me know if you can hear me. Testing, testing, 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2. Hello, hello, society, channel. Hello, one person. How are you doing? Fix this. Beta channel. Beta. So essentially, if you can hear me, if you actually have access to audio now, let me know. I'd love to know if you can hear me. Testing, testing, 1 2. Let's see. Is anyone there? Does anyone hear me? Is my voice somehow communicating through this microphone? Hello, 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 hello. Trying to get to my Creator Studio. Looks like it's just you, Alix. How are you? How are you doing? Talk about the variability in types. I thought it would be cool. I had like 10 people before. I wonder if I can get them back. Well, anyway, for those of you who are tuning in, hello, hello. How are you? So yeah, essentially I thought it was important to think about how, depending on what you score on like a Myers-Briggs instrument, there can be variations of that type. Like as an example, you might consider, what's up, Felix? Why is this great? Because of the time of day? Delete. Trying to delete my other live stream. But yeah, is this coming through like at least well enough on the audio? Is this working pretty well? I'm using the webcam that's integrated into my lap. It hasn't been working for the past like 8 months. Then I reinstalled the drivers and got it to work somehow. I felt like an INTP, to be honest, or ISTP. Who knows? Here, 1 hour and 5 minutes. Is it? Unfortunately, I'm not surprised. Can you hear me though? Is there a way for me to? What's that, Molly? Dog. Well, for those of you who can hear me, I just wanted to express to you that it's very important when you're looking at the Jungian model, right? To understand that it's a theory about cognition. And cognitive theories, right? Well, first of all, it's a theory, so yeah, it's difficult for us to speak objectively about type. But it's important to understand that when we're talking about cognition, thoughts and feelings, we do our best to try to look at the patterns, right? And then we use things like self-report and other report. A lot of what's being done on the internet is these self-report questionnaires. So people aren't always completely honest about those questionnaires too. Interestingly, there's a lot of bias that goes into these explanations of type on the internet. So first thing I just want to note is that we're very biased, I think, unfortunately, in the way that we come to understand type. But I think what's really interesting too is that even when there are patterns that we recognize, there are more patterns, right, beneath those patterns. Hey, Silky, can you hear me? Do I sound okay? Am I like, is this bearable for people, or should I just give up? Yeah, how you doing? Um, so yeah, there's variability, I think, within types. And I talked about that in one of my videos where I talked about there being commonly um, type 9 INFPs, right? Type 4, type 5s, even type 6s, even some type 2 INFPs. And that's using the Enneagram. So I think when you use the Enneagram in concert with something like Jungian typology, you get a really good understanding of personality traits, right? And in my view, it's those traits that really need to be discussed, need to be talked about, need to be, most of the time, need to be celebrated, I think. Um, so, as an example, if you're an INFP, you can be a type 9, and type 9s are very, very emotionally stable. Interestingly, type 9s are in contrast in a lot of ways to type 4s. So you see a lot of type 4 INFPs as well. Type 4s, on the one hand, are highly, highly expressive of their emotions. You're not going to see as much flat affect. You get that with people who are more emotionally stable. They want to like suppress emotional intensity. They want to keep everything even keeled. In contrast, the type 4 wants to, in some sense, completely identify with the feeling states in the moment. Both of these people, when they take the Myers-Briggs score, INFP. However, their trait for emotional stability is vastly different. Vastly different. Pretty interesting, isn't it? So I think it would be very naive to type without understanding that there are variations in type. Yeah. And the reason why I'm making this video is because I was responding to the typing police video where he thought that I didn't have intuition as a function, which is very interesting to me because I spend so much time navigating my relationships using ideas. Like I tend to assert, you know, abstractions, which I think is a very intuitive way of orienting yourself to the world. I think that I'm very weak in sensation. I think it's part of me, but there's clearly a preference. So I don't know. I think it's wild that he thought that based off of one video. And I have interacted with a lot of extroverted sensors, and they're a lot of fun. A lot of fun. A lot of fun. But they get bored if they're not engaged, usually like with the aesthetic, right? Um, and I know, at least for me, it's a bit of a struggle to enter into that kind of relationship with the world as it immediately reveals itself to my senses, right? It's much easier for me to deal with like ideas, right? Particularly exciting. Yeah, I get excited. I'm excitable, I think, sometimes. The INFP topics. Um, maybe. I guess it just depends. I think that it's a cool framework. But yeah, I think explicitly, definitely. I like dealing with theory of personality as a general topic. Um, And I was really introduced to personality using the MBTI. Yes, certainly. I think we are more than our MBTI, but I think the MBTI can help us identify traits, and that's what I'm most interested in doing. Understanding and interpreting the parts of you that seem to be consistent over time. Um, Strengths, really, personality strengths are probably one of the most exciting uh, topics that I like to mull over. Because I think in some sense we need to respect that, and we need to act. We need to engage those strengths, right? Um, it's just a beautiful part of life to use what you've been given. Yeah. See, there's a lot of variability in psychology, um, and I think if you want to take personality seriously, you should look at the five-factor model. Felix, that is absurd, but it's incredible that I have that kind of commitment from you. Holy cow. Well, you never know, huh? So that's really the primary message in this video is when we look at sensation, when we look at intuition, when we look at extroversion, introversion, yada, 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 and then we break it down and we look at the cognitive functions, right? We're not dealing with an objective system. We're not. And if we want to communicate really well about personality, we need to look at those big patterns that emerge out of those things. And to me, the bigger patterns are, oh, you're intuitive? That means you're high in trait openness. Oh, you're an extrovert? That means you get excited, you're social, right? Um, or judging versus perceiving as it relates to trait conscientiousness. But although there might not be as clear of a this like relationship between um, those two things. Well, I guess what I'm doing, and probably what I always do, is how can I be more holistic in the way that I'm looking at the world? Because the world is very mysterious. And people, my goodness, are the most complex beings in the world. You can even say, oh, well, the brain is so complicated, right? So I think we need to start with that in mind. And then when we go to we should be making conclusions. We should be trying to understand the world. But we should be also willing to understand that there is kind of like an ebb and flow, you know. I mean, I think we've all been there. You can be someone who is very, very agreeable, but you know what? When there is conflict and conflict needs to be addressed, it speaks to your emotional health as to whether or not you address that conflict. End of story, right? It's literally that simple. So for me, I'm interested in that. I'm not interested in creating excuses to limiting our understanding of human beings, but for beings to understand what they are capable of despite their differences. And I think we can support each other with our differences. I get excited about that idea too. Um, you can quite literally learn how to be better at relationships by working with a therapist who is usually much more agreeable, or at least, you know, has the tools that you're looking to use. I mean, in counseling, there there are so many similar types of people becoming counselors. It's a very interesting thing to see. But yeah, that was basically, I think I talked about primarily what I wanted to say. Um, Okay, you guys have any additional thoughts for me before I let you go? So to sort of to summarize what I've said in this video is we can't look at the mind objectively. Carl Jung knew more than anyone else that there is a subjective process. There is the unconscious too, right? So 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 we need to respect that variability when trying to use something like typology. Well, I think that INFPs. Well, this is the thing. There are there are just so many things that influence whether or not we're able to accurately interpret emotional information, if that makes sense. That's a good idea. Yeah, yeah, you're probably right. Yeah, um, probably right. Yeah, I've definitely thought more about that. Like, as you probably know, I'm in school, so I'm kind of like, I'm juggling different things, and I do love theories. I love all sorts of theories. I'm not. I think and this is where it gets really interesting. You think about the archetype of the healer, right? What is the healer like, really? The healer is open. The healer is receptive. So what produces movement and harmony? Does that make sense? So that means that the healer has to wear different hats, right? Has to work with the other persona, always changing, always adapting, not in the sense of like a chameleon to manipulate, but in a sense to match the expression of the other person, right? To create rapport. And it's in creating rapport that the real healing happens, I think. Um, yeah. Mhm. Yeah. And I think we have to grow, you know? Always got to be growing. Mhm. All right, you guys. Well, take care. Expect a real video pretty soon. Um, yeah, I look forward to enjoying my break, drinking plenty of coffee, and talking about all sorts of ideas with you. Take care.